This is part two of my interview with Jim Mars. Now, I wanted to talk to you about a lot of people are concerned with this disclosure project and they're wondering what's going on. And I feel like we are kind of being really prepped for something. Now, many years ago, Reagan actually said how great it would be if there was some sort of an invasion from outer space because then everyone would get together and we would all be one human race. So we've kind of been having little drips of that and how that could tie into a one world government. But Stephen Hawking came out 2010, said don't contact aliens. They're much more advanced. Just yesterday on the Independent, a scientist warns the world to think twice before replying to alien signals from outer space because once again they're probably much more advanced than we are. Last year, Vatican astronomer citing this is from the Vatican talking about our extraterrestrial brothers. And he said there could be other beings who remained in full friendship with their creator. So, really prepping us for some type of an encounter with extraterrestrial life. And we have the Pope coming out with his papal encyclical talking about a planetary council to oversee the world. We've got former Canadian defense minister saying governments are hiding aliens and he's urging world leaders to reveal the secret files. So, I mean, this was what, Friday, July 24th, this came out? Or I'm sorry, April 22nd. April 22nd. So, I mean, we're seeing a lot of this happening. So, what do you think?
Well, number one, I'm not worried about an Independence Day type invasion where they blow up our cities and they're trying to eat us. And people like Hawkins who say, "Oh, don't contact them; they may be dangerous." I can't help but laugh at that because having actually taught a college level course on UFOs and having studied that for many years, going back into the 50s, actually, the whole idea of UFOs and extraterrestrials, this is nothing new. This goes back throughout our recorded history. You got Ezekiel, a fiery wheel in the Bible, and it picked him up, carried him to a city, and you've got the flying boats of the ancient Egyptians, the flying dragons of the Chinese, the Vyamas of the Hindus, the
Right.
flying shields of the Romans. I mean, all the way up today with the crop circles and the animal mutilations. And it's always been here.
Hmm.
So
So, why
if
are they hiding? I mean,
so,
why?
if their purpose then was to eat us or enslave us, they would have done it long before now. And it's like the scientist that says, well, maybe we don't want to send signals into space. They may be more advanced than us. Well, if they're more advanced than us, you better believe they know we're here. Okay. I think they leave us alone because I think that something similar to the Star Trek Prime Directive, that they have in Star Trek, which says that it's not proper to overtly interfere with the natural progress of a species. And now, whether that's an actual law with enforcement troops and stuff, I'm not sure. I think it's probably more of a universal understanding by people and civilizations that have gotten advanced enough to move into space. They're also socially advanced enough to know it's not proper to go and interfere.
Hmm.
I'll give you a good example. Not long back, they discovered in South America a Stone Age tribe. And so they quickly sealed off that whole area, not to keep them in, but to keep everybody else out so that scientists could go and actually study them and find out how Stone Age people lived. And then they went through a conditioning process, their own disclosure, if you will. And they had some of the scientists would let themselves be seen from a distant hilltop, and then they moved a little closer and they'd be seen across the field, and until finally they made contact. And by the time now these villagers knew that they weren't a threat, and so they accepted their presence. And then they gave them a few rudimentary things like maybe metal knives or something that improved their life. But it was unlike most of man's history where in Western civilization, they'd rush in with Bibles and guns and say, put on some clothes,
Or
and just,
smallpox.
yeah, smallpox and totally destroy their civilization. So that's going on. So actually, we're in the same thing on a grander scale. If you extrapolate on up, I know going back to the 1950s, the national polls showed that virtually no one believe there was any kind of life outside the earth.
Mm,
Today, it's quite the opposite. The vast majority really believe, especially younger people, aliens, people on other worlds, sure, they
right.
accept that.
Well, we got a lot of movies coming out like that as well. Now, what about Project Bluebeam? I mean, do you think that there is maybe an effort by the elite or kind of the secret hands to possibly use some sort of a disclosure as a means to usher in a one world government?
Well, let me say this about disclosure. Disclosure is not going to come from any of our governments. Okay. And actually, it already has. If you listen to some of our astronauts, and if you listen to Paul Hellyer, former Defense Ministry of Canada, if you'll, on and on, Werner von Braun, they talked about aliens and extraterrestrials. So it's out there for the people who want to look at it. But the real disclosure is going to come only from them. And it's simple enough. All they got to do is let themselves be known, hover above a large city long enough for the news crews to get out there with their cameras, and the game's up.
Right. Well, and I think, with the crop circles and everything, I mean, is that not enough of a message or people?
Absolutely. If you look at it, of course, see, this conditioning process is, and particularly if you look at it from the standpoint of a government, say the United States government, they have to represent all the people. Okay. Now, there's a segment of the people, you and I'd fall into this. We really want to know the truth. We really want to know, are they out there and where they come from and what are they doing? But you got another segment of the population, they really don't want to know. I don't want to know that stuff. And so what the government does is play very cozy. For example, the crash at Roswell in 1947, okay? On the one hand, you have a government pronouncement that says, no, 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 it's just a mogul balloon. It was, it was some crash dummies. Nothing unusual happened there, backed by little or nothing as far as evidence goes. On the other hand, you've got about 500 people who are now on the public record saying, I was there and I picked up pieces of the wreckage and I saw the bodies and I transported the bodies, et cetera, et cetera. But they leave you that choice.
Right.
You can choose which one you want to believe. And so when they tell you, well, it was just crash dummies, in this way, the people who actually study the evidence can go, holy cow, they're lying to us. That means it's true. So they're told the truth. And the people who don't want to hear about it, they can go to sleep peacefully and say, well, the government
Yeah.
said it was just crash dummies.
People love that cognitive dissonance. I know they talk a lot about, I think they even came out a few months ago and said a lot of the things you thought were unidentified flying objects were actually just military equipment we didn't want you guys to know about just yet. So
But,
that's kind of their new ploy.
right. And which is a great sounding public relations thing. But see, how do you explain the Aurora crash of 1897? That was seen, recorded in the newspapers in Texas, seen by hundreds of people, and said the newspaper account said the pilot was not an inhabitant of this world. And this occurred 6 years before the Wright brothers flew.
Hmm.
There was nothing man-made in the air. See, they skip over that.
Yeah, and we've actually got some Pentagon documents. I was just looking at them the other day where they talk about um, interacting with these people and they were human-like but a little bit taller and they had lasers on their ships and these are Pentagon documents and when you click on it at the .gov site there's a big warning that comes up and says these are old and we don't probably agree with what's here but in public interest here are these documents and they encounter I mean it's like it's right there
It's
but
the old plausible
yeah, you
deniability
believe it
again.
if you want
You
to.
can believe it if you want to, but you don't have to believe it. And of course, the controversy rolls on. So, and that's what's going to happen with disclosure. It's really incredible, but do not look for a government official of any
Mhm.
type to step forward and say, okay, here's the truth.
Right.
Because number one, nobody, half the population wouldn't believe him anyway.
Right, and especially, the Vatican ushering on our extraterrestrial brothers. For me, that's a huge Project Bluebeam red light. Well, Jim Mars, thank you so much. I know you talk about a little bit of this stuff in one of your books, Our Occulted History. There's a lot of
Al-
other
al-
books
Also,
as well.
also, my book, even before that, was Alien Agenda,
Mm,
which starts with the premise that UFOs are real. So, who are they and what do they want?
interesting.
And that I've been told has become the top selling nonfiction book on UFOs in the world.
Wow. Well, congratulations. All right. Jim Mars, thank you so much.
Thank